Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. Welcome to A Taste of Landline, where we showcase our food and where it comes from. Coming up, farming abalone, when lying down is good for business.
The two species that we have, green lip, they're very well mannered, they're calm abalone, whereas the tiger, they're a little bit crazier, they tend to crawl out of their tank sometimes.
The inspirational bushwomen doing it on their own.
We must turn it into a positive, and we've got to go on because people depend on us.
And linseed in a new light.
Hi, I'm Jodie Gunders. For decades, linseed has struggled to be a popular crop in Australia, but that could be about to change. Researchers are now claiming this ancient grain has remarkable medicinal properties. Farming doesn't get much prettier than this. But there's more to linseed than good looks. In fact, it's hard to find a more versatile crop. As an oil, it can be used as a solvent or to varnish a cricket bat. And the stem of the plant has been used to make textiles for thousands of years. But now these tiny seeds could have enormous potential in the fight against obesity.
If some of the health research is accurate, a relatively small amount of linseed could play a very big role in disease prevention and in improving the general health of the Australian community.
The research is showing us that with linseed or with components of linseed, we are getting very marked reversal of the changes that are due to the high-fat diet.
Oscar Pearce's family has been on the land since the 1870s. A few years ago, he decided to give linseed a go.
Linseed fits well within our cropping rotation, primarily wheat and chickpea winter cropping. It fits in well with that rotation.
It's been a pretty good season, and Oscar's hoping for good yields and, just as importantly, good prices.
We've just started harvest and just getting the machine set up. It's a little tricky, linseed, to harvest. It takes a bit of nuance, but we're enjoying seeing the returns coming in.
Linseed is grown from southeast Queensland through northern and central New South Wales, western Victoria and Tasmania. But despite being grown in Australia for many decades, this ancient grain remains an underrated crop. However, that could all change if, as some claim, linseed proves to be a sleeping giant of nutrition. A few hundred kilometres away and across the border in Queensland, research is underway to tap into the health benefits of linseed. The University of Southern Queensland's Professor Lindsay Brown is feeding rats a diet of linseed to study its effect on obesity. Professor Brown thinks linseed has enormous potential as a functional food. That is, a food that not only provides nutrition, but can also improve health by preventing or reducing chronic illnesses and inflammation. And he's testing that theory in the lab. We're looking at the two rats here. We've got let's just run down your sleeve there.
Yes.
This is your fat rat.
That's right. And so very obviously, these are age-matched. One's been fed with a controlled diet, so they actually get a lot of cornstarch. This one's been fed with the condensed milk and the fructose and the beef tallow. And you can see very clearly there that increase in the abdominal fat. Now, clearly these rats are quite healthy. They're not, they're obviously moving around quite a lot, but they're quite healthy. It's just that difference is that increase in abdominal fat.
Most Australians aren't morbidly obese, but 2 out of 3 are overweight. So this research involves modelling mild to moderate obesity. With the now fat rats fed a diet of linseed, Lindsay Brown and his colleagues set about measuring its impact. What they're finding are results that rival those achieved with medication, and that means linseed could replace pills.
And these changes are not trivial. These changes are as good as the best medications we've got.
But can these results be replicated in humans? Lindsay Brown is confident they can.
And the reason for this confidence is a series of studies that have been carried out by colleagues in Canada, Canada being the major linseed production area in the world, showing that in patients with mildly increased blood pressure, about 140 millimetres of mercury systolic, that can be reduced by about 10 millimetres of mercury over a period of 6 months. Now that's as good as any drug can do in that group of patients over that period of time.
This isn't the first time the health benefits of linseed have been identified. In the late 1990s, bakery giant Tip Top began adding linseed to its Bergen-branded bread, targeting in the main menopausal women. And 7 years ago, Landline reported on the health benefits of linseed oil.
Company founder and food chemist Jeff Steineke has been a fan of the gleaming liquid since he imported a drumload of it from Canada 25 years ago.
The oil has been shown to have benefits in terms of heart health and also as anti-arthritic.
But until now, there's been little hard evidence of linseed's benefits, and it's dropped off the health food radar.
I think linseed lost popularity not because it wasn't working, but simply because people thought there's nothing exciting about it. We know about it, it's there, but it's all anecdote. And sometimes they didn't like the taste.
Having studied a range of foods for their suitability as functional foods, one element that kept cropping up was polyunsaturated fatty acids, in particular the omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids.
That these are considered to be really good for you, but if you look at the story of it, the fish ones are wonderful, and yet the plant-based ones are always considered to be second-rate. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and so we tested that. And yes, what we found very clearly was that the alpha-linolenic acid from the linseed was just as good as the fish oil ones.
As far as Oscar Pearce is concerned, linseed's key appeal is as an alternative source of omega-3s. With fish stocks under pressure, he thinks linseed could meet demand for the long-chain fatty acids, sought after for their health benefits, without the environmental impact.
Linseed is easily grown. It's a plant-based source of omega-3s, and it has the ability to very easily be scaled up as an industry. So we can grow as much as consumers want within a very short period of time.
Oscar Pearce doesn't want linseed to be seen as just another superfood. He hopes the promising results coming out of the University of Southern Queensland and Canada will give the crop longevity and encourage more growers to give it a go.
Look, I think as a grower there's some trepidation about the idea that this will become another short-term boom and bust food fad. If it can be shown using rigorous scientific health studies that it has those long-term health impacts, I think we're in it for the long run, for a long increase in demand and a long increase in production.
I've been with my dog pretty much since he was a pup, and he's been pretty handy and good to me and does mostly what I want him to do. And yeah.
Is he your best friend?
Pretty much, yeah. Sit, come on, sit.
Make him sit, that's it.
Stop, steady. Get out.
G'day, I'm Lydia Burton. Living and working in outback Australia can be wonderful, but also difficult and dangerous. This story is about 3 women who, after losing their husbands, decided to take on the challenge of running enormous sheep and cattle stations in outback Queensland. These 3 women from 3 different properties look after more than 60,000 hectares of land in outback Queensland. they do it almost all on their own. Each of their husbands died suddenly. They've all made the choice to stay on and work the land.
I used to think it wasn't real. I think it hasn't happened. He'll come walking in that back door. He never came back into that back door.
Everybody has a sad story and you can't dwell on it and you can't feel sorry for yourself. Now, we must turn it into a positive and we've got to go on, and because people depend on us.
Anne Ballinger has come to accept having 12,000 hectares basically to herself.
I'm my own boss. I live in a part of the world that there's beautiful blue sky. I feel very fortunate to live where I live.
Anne's life is at Stockholm Station, a grazing property near the tiny town of Muttaburra, pretty much smack bang in the centre of Queensland. She lives alone and looks after about 1,000 head of cattle.
We get it in our blood a bit. The culture of this life becomes part of us.
Anne grew up in the bush and always enjoyed living on the land. When she moved to Muttaburra in the 80s with her husband Bill, she knew they were there to stay. It was the perfect place to raise their children.
When we got to this district, it was a lot of young people with a lot of children our children's age.
But just after Christmas, in the year 2000, everything changed.
On Boxing Day, the kids and I were gone out mustering because we had sheep work to do. And sadly, Bill had a heart attack and died on Boxing morning. And so, yeah, it was, it changed our lives forever.
Anne was widowed at 50. Her 3 children, all still in their teens. Anne faced a huge decision. Her backyard was bigger than most, and not everyone thought she could or should manage Stockholm on her own.
Well, after Bill died, I was very keen to stay. There were some family members that were a little bit iffy, and I said, look, we'll give it 12 months. And I don't know, we haven't been back to decide whether the 12 months after 16 years.
There have been some steep learning curves along the way. Anne's surprised even herself with what she's learnt to tackle.
Obviously, when you live 140 k's from a service centre, it's impossible to get people out at the drop of a hat. So you've got to really be able to do quite a lot of stuff.
She believes the best way to keep going is to keep going.
There have been plenty of times when I've been in corners that I don't know how I'm going to get out of, and I've been fixing something or can't get something going or something, and I've thrown spanners up in the air to try and hit Bill, but I've never been able to actually quite get him. But anyway.
Penny Button lives 55 kilometres south of Anne's place. She runs a vast 32,000 hectare property, which in a good year can turn out up to 5,000 head of cattle.
I get great satisfaction out of achieving things. I love seeing the place being developed and improved, and I love seeing lovely stock, and I enjoy it.
Penny is also a widow. Her husband Ian died of heart failure in 2006.
It's no truer saying as you don't know what you've got until you haven't got it. I just realise now the stress in running these properties and, yeah, the tough side of things that he shielded me from forever.
Tragedies are a funny thing until you experience them. You can't quite comment on them or you don't know how to take them. So I guess it's just one of life's paths that you have to take and make the best of it you can at the time, and you just deal with it the best you can, I guess.
Hugh's come home to help run the family property with his wife Amanda and their young son Charlie. He knows the hard work that goes into it, something his mum has shouldered on her own for years.
I admire her greatly. I admire her for many things. It's all been part of her life and her journey. It hasn't been a very fair one at times, but that's not the description of the life or the path she chose. It was just something she encountered, and I admired her for a lot of things before they even came along.
Just like Anne, Penny had to decide what her next step was going to be. Why did you decide to stay in the bush?
Oh, Lydia, there was never any question about it. Why wouldn't I?
The tale of strong women left to make it on their own isn't uncommon in Western Queensland.
People say, oh, you're so strong and you're so... But I don't think I am. I think I've decided this is what I'm staying here to do. I ask myself all the time, what am I doing here? But I guess I just love being here, and I have got no great desire to do anything else at this stage.
Ros Wood lives at Koondoo Station, a 16,000 hectare property about 75 kilometres from the small community of Blackall. For almost a decade now, she's run the mixed grazing station by herself, raising thousands of sheep and caring for hundreds of cattle.
I came to the Blackall area in 1980 as a governess. I came for 12 months. I did my teacher's training in New South Wales, and I couldn't get a job down there, so I came governessing for 12 months, and then I was going back to get a job in New South Wales, and I stayed, yes.
Ros fell in love with a bloke by the name of Colin, along with life in the bush. But Ros and Colin's happy life was shattered in 2008. Colin was killed in a motorbike accident on the property.
He went down and turned the pump off, and he was gone for about 10 minutes, I suppose. And I thought, oh, there's something wrong. He doesn't take that long to turn the pump off. Yeah, and I went down and found him on the road.
What was it like for you?
It was the worst day of my life. It was terrible. It's just terrible.
Colin's hat still hangs on the hook on the wall. His saddle and riding boots remain in the horse shed, just how he left them.
You never get over it. You never. I don't think you ever get over it.
Life in the outback is demanding. It's also dangerous. There's machinery, unpredictable animals, and people are far away from medical help when they need it. But the wide open spaces and rural life has a powerful draw, even after tragedy.
We have a lot of fun, and it's a wonderfully free life, and I've never felt isolated ever. Too much to do.
It's the old saying, it's not the events in your life, it's the way you handle them. That's probably the key. Your attitude is everything.
A good friend once said, life is not fair, but it's still good. And I think of that all the time.
People do think I'm a bit eccentric. They think we're a bit odd. They must think like, you know, those Dutch people come up with crazy ideas.
What's under here? Oh, hello.
I think it tastes a bit like mushrooms. It's very nutty.
Hello, I'm Kerry State. Abalone farming has been a roller coaster ride with some very big dips. But the owners of Australia's largest operation are finally being rewarded for investing in this risky and still relatively new aquaculture industry. The ocean depths deliver some of our finest seafood and inspire childhood dreams.
I grew up in a small town in East Gippsland in Victoria called Malakuta. Every kid growing up in Malakuta wanted to be an abalone diver, and I was no exception.
That desire has taken Tim Rudge in a different direction than he first imagined, onshore. He's the manager of this huge abalone farm on the water's edge at Narrawong, east of Portland.
Fishing is often about taking, and even as an 18-year-old, I didn't see that as the future that I wanted to pay for myself. So the idea of growing something and actually doing something more sustainable than fishing appealed to me.
The farm grows two types of abalone, which are basically marine snails.
Here we have a green lip abalone.
Oh, okay, it's quite different then to this one, which is the tiger, is that right?
Yes, they are, yeah. So the tiger is a first cross hybrid between a black female and a green male.
Do they taste different?
They're very similar. They're very similar, but particularly sashimi, people say that the green lip are a bit sweeter.
I've noticed them moving around a bit because they look so sedate in the water, but they can move.
No, they can move. If they have to retreat or escape predation from perhaps a starfish, they can move, and particularly if they end up in this situation in the wild, they have to be able to flip themselves over quickly.
So basically, if you put that back in...
Yeah.
What happens?
They're very acrobatic.
Keeping his business from going belly up has also required plenty of resilience. When Tim Rudge first got involved after studying aquaculture at university, the industry was in its infancy and often struggling. But his first job at a hatchery also taught him how exciting it could be.
To suddenly have 4 million larvae swimming around in a couple of small tanks that you created yourself through inducing adults to spawn was magic. It's just like magic.
So what have we got in here?
So this is our nursery. This is where all of our babies are. So in here there's probably 500,000 or 600,000.
Now at his own farm, which he started in 2000 with a group of investors, the novelty of raising his babies hasn't worn off. What do they actually grow on?
Perspex plates, and I'll roll it up this way, which will allow us to see a lot more of them.
It takes 2 to 3 years to reach a harvestable size, with the young feasting on an algal garden for their first 6 months, before being introduced to pellets made from 12 ingredients, including soybean meal and seaweed. Do they get stuck into the algae?
Oh, absolutely. They're like sheep in a paddock. Within a month, they'll eat this back to bare plastic. It's phenomenal how much they can eat, all these little mouths.
The other essential ingredient that keeps the shellfish growing is seawater. It brings oxygen to the marine snails and carries away waste. These abalone may be a little sluggish, but the environment around them is never still. These shallow tanks are constantly being refreshed with 1,200 litres of seawater pumping through this facility every second. So when it comes to keeping costs down, it's all about location, location.
When I first looked at this site, it is so low. Right now we're 5 metres above sea level. So pumping water here is very, very efficient and very cheap. And I really see this system as it's almost like an extension of the ocean.
What's the go for the weekend, Benny? You going fishing?
Hopefully.
Yeah, when we're on the harvester for a few hours at a time, we can get to know each other pretty well, have some interesting conversations.
Working this closely with the stock, they also get to know the abalone rather well.
There's an abalone out there that has a very light coloured shell, and Joel, one of our staff members here, is blonde, so it got called Joel. 673 was the lowest and 710 was the highest.
And production manager Flynn Taylor says what's under the shell has more personality than you'd think.
The two species that we have, green lip, one of them, they're very well mannered, they're calm abalone. They They don't crawl around very much. They sort of sit where we want them to sit. Whereas the tiger, they're a little bit crazier. They tend to crawl out of their tank sometimes.
Caring for their naughty and nice charges day after day can make the final phase of this farming operation an unwelcome one for some.
If they're needed to work in the process area, they sometimes don't like that because they've been growing these abalone for up to 3 years sometimes. So yeah, it can be a little bit heartbreaking.
While China and South Korea dominate global production, Tim Rudge says demand for the company's abalone well and truly outstrips supply. Yamba exports 70% of what it produces. Domestically, though, it's a shellfish that divides consumers.
Hard to break through the Western barrier, but it's not really our focus market. Our focus market is on Asians, Chinese in particular. Japanese is a big market for us. And they really revere the abalones.
In the meantime, they're savouring the ambitious goal they have achieved.
Johnny, you're going to come and cook?
Yep.
In an industry that has burnt many.
Nice and hot. Is that too hot? No. Over the journey, so many people have told us that we'd never do it. You know, I've had far more people say, you'll go broke, they'll never buy your farmed abalone. So look, it makes it all the more enjoyable to see where we've come to now.
Flash fried ab, next to the sea.
Doesn't get any better.
Boys?
Come and get some, guys. Squeeze the lemon, Johnny.
That's it. Abs are up.
And that's the show. We hope you enjoyed today's menu. Next time on A Taste of Landline, the Aussies helping rebuild Nepal. The 101-year-old grazier still going strong.
He just tells me what I got to do, and well, I wouldn't want it any other way. Like it's his. I'm just his arms and legs, really.
There you go, team.
And a chilly Christmas feast in Antarctica.